Welcome back to the Leadership Studio. This is our last class of the semester, so I'm sure you guys are excited, but I'm going to miss you guys, and I know you'll be back next semester for another round of classes. And so we've saved really the best for the last. And so we have with us Anna Babin. Anna is the CEO of the United Way here in Houston, and she has two big CEO titles under her belt. Before that, she was at Catholic Charities, and so we'll talk a little bit about both of those things. Anna, thank you so much for being in our little leadership studio today.
I'm pleased. Thank you so much for asking me.
Absolutely. So the students are all watching, and if they miss it, it's taped for them to see.
Okay,
so all your answers are permanent here. So.
Okay, got it.
First question, and we've asked each of our leaders this question. If you're writing a book, Anna, on leadership, what are some of the chapters, what are some of the steps to being a good leader that you might list?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. As a matter of fact, I pondered that almost 9 years ago when I was asked to share this at a panel, and I just so happened to have them here, but there are 7 points, and if I could go through them, they'd be really great. First is have a plan. Or else no one will follow you.
Yeah.
You've got to have a plan. You have to dream with others, you have to think out loud, you have to create a roadmap, but you have to be specific. And I always say conceive, believe, and achieve. So you have to have a plan, okay? No one will follow it. Write it down. The second thing is write it down, or you'll forget, and you'll forget what you need to do to follow through. I think the worst thing that nonprofits do is that they have all these grandiose dreams and plans, but they never come back a year later to report back to a board or to the community that they've accomplished anything.
Yeah.
So write it down, follow through, and then celebrate yourself.
Let's talk about first those two steps and then come back.
Okay.
So the idea of having a vision and creating a strategic plan to go with it, you work with a lot of nonprofits.
Yes.
And are there a certain group of nonprofits that aren't doing those types of things?
Well, I think the ones that I know are doing it, but they might not do it. They may not be faithful in holding themselves accountable. And I think that's the leader has to set that tone and it permeate down into the organization. So, to answer that, I would say that most people are understanding that strategic planning and having this vision is really important. As a matter of fact, any nonprofit can get help from us through Nonprofit Connection, and we can provide a consultant that'll help them to do that, to develop the plan. So,
and when you see those strategic plans, I guess some are better than others.
Yeah, some are meaty. Some are just high level, and in that high level, you're hoping one day that there's some granular text underneath it that says these are the objectives, and I hope to achieve this by X date, and I hope to increase this by X percent. But yeah, you get the whole spectrum,
of course.
Sometimes a plan presented or worked on with the governing board is really as strong as the governing board's involvement. If they're going to push and ask for more, you're going to get more. So, and also, I would say that CEO with the governing board, they're in partnership. And so they're going to take their lead from the CEO, but the CEO's also going to take his or her lead from the board.
That's right. Your number 3.
My number 3 is expect the best in yourself and in others. And I would say be passionate, energetic, and hopeful, but also self-evaluate. I think the thing that I always tell my staff is that I'm the hardest critic on myself, but I think you have to step back periodically and say, did I handle that situation well? Could I have gone the extra mile? I said, be kind to yourself when life happens, and really avoid criticism. Not just criticizing yourself, but criticizing someone else. So expect the best in yourself and of others.
Wow.
That's really, really important.
You know, a number of leaders have also talked about the need to continue to learn as leaders. And that sort of falls in there, I guess, right? The idea that we're always learning and we can't really feel like we know it all.
That's exactly right. And that gets to a point I have about stretch yourself to learn something new.
Oh, okay.
And be open to learn from those who report to you. I think sometimes leaders think that they can't learn from their direct reports or anybody in the organization. And my goodness, I may know a lot, but I may not know the uniqueness of this accounting application or this fundraising approach
Right.
that we're taking. I've got great staff that will teach me, and be open to do that, and be open to hear that, that nudge, that correction, so to speak. And so when I was talking about stretching myself, when I was at Catholic Charities, I had no experience whatsoever in advocacy. And I did a lot of work on the service side, the charity side, but there was a social justice side as well. And so learning that was really very, a thing that really stretched me. I was uncomfortable with it. And then I realized, well, the people that I'm sitting across the table, a state legislature or legislator or the senator, et cetera, are just like me. They're people.
That's right.
We voted them in. They ought to be listening to us. So that leads to one point about fear no one, but have a healthy respect for people. And what I say about this is that when I work for Catholic Charities, it's a sole member corporation, and the sole member is the bishop of the diocese. And at the time, it was Archbishop Fiorenza, whom I love deeply. He's like the model of social justice in the community. And but he had a style you never knew if he was mad at you. But he was an introvert. And there were times when I presented things to him that was almost like a challenge, but I felt like I needed to do it because I needed to be true to the mission, but also to move the agency ahead. So I would say fear no one, including your board of directors, but have a healthy respect for everyone that you're interacting with. Then I also say is lean on someone you trust.
Oh.
In the nonprofit, in the CEO position, it's a very lonely position.
It is.
I mean, you may not think it is, but it is a lonely. You know it is. You live it. A lonely position because there's just so many things you cannot discuss with your staff. You may be dreaming and thinking about reorganizing, or you have an assessment about somebody that you want to test with. Well, you need to find a confidant. You need to have someone that will listen to you non-judgmentally, but just be a place where you can unload. And it could be a spouse, it could be a friend, you could take it in prayer, it could be God. But you need to lean on someone and bare your soul and share your dreams. But it's not always the people inside your organization.
It's funny because when you do that, because you think the people inside your organization will be good, but it sets off so many alarms for them,
It
right?
does.
They don't know how to take you just sort of surmising or dreaming about what might happen.
Yeah, I'm always surprised that I'm thinking I'm just Anna and I'm walking down the hall and I'm saying hello to people, and first thing you know, people say, Anna's walking down the hall. What's going on? It's like, well, I'm walking down the hall. I'm saying hello to people. And I forget that I think of myself just as me, and they see me as their CEO and boss, and it's a different, and
not just a boss, it's like the big boss.
Yeah,
right?
that's exactly right. And so the last thing I would say is that celebrate, party every chance you get. In the social service arena, it's hard work. It's easy to transfer the pain of a client that you're dealing with, or the challenges that you might be dealing with in trying to impact the community or raise money. But find the little things that are milestones and celebrate. So many times we think about at the United Way, we celebrate the end of the campaign and it's about, this reaching the goal. But we step back and celebrate with the finance staff when they get a clean audit. And we step back and we celebrate with the community impact staff when they've completed this exhaustive community investment process. And people remember that. People will want to be in a place that's joyful, joyous, and that their contributions get recognized. So that's kind of what I would put in a leadership book. Those are my kind of 7 points. And it's have a plan or no one will follow you. Write it down or else you'll forget and you won't hold yourself accountable. Expect the very best in yourself and others. Fear no one. Lean on someone you trust. Stretch yourself to learn something new, and then party hardy.
When you look at the things that are your strengths, Anna, as a CEO, and you look at your weaknesses, how have those changed over the years and over time for you?
Well, it's funny you asked that. I started out in accounting. I got an accounting degree, and I'm a CPA, and so half of my career was in the finance side in not-for-profit. And I remember at my college course, you had to take speech, and I nearly fainted. I couldn't do public speaking. Then I would sit in church, and the priest would be asking for money, and I would get so weary of people. And then it's like kind of like, oh my gosh, but when you believe in, what I found in myself is when I believe in something and I understand it really well, I can speak to it. So my public speaking changed. I thought I was an introvert, but really I am an extrovert. Because
And was that a change or just a discovery, do you think?
It was a discovery for me.
Wow.
And I think this whole, I also had this kind of this fear of asking permission or talking to someone and asking permission about something versus stating, well, I'm the CEO, this is what I should expect. And it was, I really had some coaching in that regard about understanding my position. It was not abusing the position, but understanding that people are looking at you to lead. So it's not always consensus. It's not always, let me know what you think. Not that I don't want to know what you think, but these are my thoughts. Will you implement them? I'd like you to implement them. And so that was a big change in me. I sometimes, when I write a lot of emails to folks, and I find myself rewriting them because I've put them in a position that I look like I'm weak, not in control.
Yeah.
And it is not that I flip it that I'm in control, but it's a statement about that I know my stuff, and I'm just kind of delivering that message to you that way. So that's what I've found over the years, how I've changed,
Yeah, because I think we do change as leaders, right? I think over time we change, and we think of one thing as a weakness, and we later, I mean, for me personally, for early in my career, people would say, you don't give enough positive feedback. And lately, I hired a new person recently that said, you're way too nice. You're giving people tons of feedback all the time. And so it's sort of interesting. Maybe I overcorrected, right?
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah,
I'd rather do that.
Exactly. One of the things that comes up a lot in these conversations is the need to hire a great staff. The Jim Collins, get the right people on the bus.
Right.
Tell me how you get your right people on the bus.
Well, it's a good question, and it's a hard question to answer because you don't really know until about a year out.
Yeah.
My whole philosophy is that unless someone goes through a whole cycle, a whole year, you really don't know if they are getting it or they're a part of the team. And what we do at the United Way in a lot of the jobs, especially in donor relations, is we have team interviews, but we really ask the questions about culture. Because getting the right people on the bus is not about so much your technical skills and your competency that way and all your experience you bring, which is all good and we want that.
Right.
But are you going to fit in a nonprofit environment, especially if you came from the for-profit arena? Because it's a different animal. Working with volunteers, learning how to staff a committee, learning how to staff a volunteer or a board of directors, understanding that you live in the gray area. Even in accounting, when people think it's always black and white, you live in a gray area. And can you adjust to that? And I think that watching that happen over the years helps you retain staff. And then our senior team gets together once a year in our annual staff retreat, and we've gone through and we've assessed everyone in the organization as to who are we going to invest in as our future? Who are we going to provide coaches for? Who are we going to mentor? And so I personally then take on a couple of people a year to mentor. So that because when you think about it.
Do they give you the biggest stars, the biggest potential?
No, I pick out the ones
you pick.
Yeah. I say, these are the folks I want to work with. And I give a year's worth of commitment, and they give a commitment to me. And so to me, that's saying, they're going to talk to me about leadership. They're going to talk to me, how did you manage growing up and having children and working all these long hours? I need to kind of share that with the younger, my millennials, so to speak, so they can understand that you can do this work, and you've got the competencies to do it.
When So many people apply for jobs in nonprofits, right? I know for positions with us, probably much like you get anywhere between 200 and 500 applicants. How do you decide when you have that many applicants who you're going to even interview?
Well, I've got a great HR department. And honestly, I will tell you that one of I would say my finest hires was our VP of Human Resources. And it was one of the first hires after I got back to the United Way in '05. I hired her January '06. She had 20 plus years of experience with AT&T and training, and she is an advocate for the employee, but she understands the role of management. And what she does is she helps with the screening. She presents them to the staff, to leadership, and say, these are the folks you need to interview. And then she will also give judgment and be an active part of that. So she's got a big job in culling out people. And then, you know, as you do, there'll be the person that'll call you and say, Anna, would you interview this person? Would you talk to this person? And she does a lot of that for me, or sets up phone calls with me. So I would say having a very strong HR person when because there's no way you can.
It's hard. There are too many applicants and too many good applicants, frankly.
Exactly.
It's a tough deal. Let's, you alluded to how you grew up and your background. Tell us a little bit about that. Where did you start? Where were you born? Where did you go to school?
Okay. Well, born and raised in Rosenberg, Richmond, Texas.
Right here in the area.
Right in the area. I was a native Texan. Was on a cotton farm for my first 6 years of my life. Went to Lamar Consolidated High School in Rosenberg, and then went on to Lamar University in Beaumont, and got an accounting degree there, and interviewed on campus. And my first job was with Price Waterhouse.
Right off into accounting, right off the
bat.
into
accounting. Stayed there a couple of years, and then went into internal audit with Service Corporation International. And if anybody knows that, it's a funeral holding home. It's like, whoa, what a strange job to be in. But this whole everybody needs internal audit. They were in a high growth and acquisition mode at the time. I got great experience. They were under an FTC investigation too, so I got great experience dealing with, auditing some of the funeral homes. Then it's so funny because I never thought, I'm pretty gutsy sometimes, but after doing a whole lot of overtime and excessive work, my boss was going to give me like a 1% raise, all this, and I'm thinking, boy, I deserved a whole lot more. And I told him that, and he said, well, what are you going to do about it? I said, I'm going to look for another job. And the United Way.
Did you really say that to him?
I did. Yeah. I did.
Wow.
But that was when I was like 25, and I was like, don't
Acting
do
like
that.
A millennial.
Don't do that. I did. I'm going to find out, what are we going to do about it? And so United Way had an internal audit department at the time. Many years ago, we actually audited some of the agencies we invested in. We did a full financial audit, except we couldn't render a clean opinion because we were paid by a funding source.
Yes.
But then, because we raised money with the federal government, the combined federal campaign, the Office of Personnel Management said every recipient agency that you give money to has to have an independent audit. So, oh my gosh, this audit department had to, they just went away, except for me. And I stayed on and did grant reviews, and all of a sudden my boss, the controller, became VP of Finance and Administration, and I became controller. So that was my first exposure on the operation side versus auditing. And then from controller to vice president of Finance and Administration.
Let me ask you, the switch from the business world to the nonprofit world. Because you were in finance and accounting, did it seem seamless, or did you see big cultural differences?
Well, it seemed seamless in the beginning, but you couldn't live in isolation in the finance area and not understand the mission. And so this whole indoctrination of understanding that you were working for an organization that wasn't building widgets, they weren't concerned for the profit margin, they were concerned about improving lives and taking care of people. So there's a whole attitude shift that I started to understand that behind the numbers there were lives, that people were being taken care of. And so I would say you still ran it like a business. You still applied all those same skills that you had, but it was a kind of a deepening. And I even say, people will ask me, did your finance background benefit you into a leadership role? Absolutely, because I was at the table with every one of my peers as we were doing strategic planning. You couldn't help understand how to develop program if you weren't there sitting there with them and then helping to develop the costs related to it. And so that was just the best learning experience I had. But then again, deepening into these numbers, we're going to help X number of children or keep X number of seniors in their homes. And so that was kind of the transformation that I saw, the difference in a for-profit accounting function and a not-for-profit.
So many times you hear people from the business side say there must be so much psychological salary, so much good feelings by going into the nonprofit world. I mean, did you feel that as you made that transition?
I absolutely did.
Yeah.
I absolutely did. I was personally a beneficiary of a United Way agency, which happened to be Catholic Charities, which I think is so funny, then become the CEO of Catholic Charities. And so this was, in a way, I knew I could make more money someplace else, but this was my way of giving back to honestly an agency that saved my life. So you will find that there are a lot of people that go into not-for-profit that have had a personal experience. They want to work with an organization that they believe in the mission, if it's about children or seniors or environment or, healthcare, et cetera. And it's those are the kind of people, when you talk about the hires, those are the kind of people you want attracted to you. That
Can you talk about your personal experience?
Sure. Back to that Polish, big, strong, strict Polish family, Catholic family, and my mother had to get married, and I was the baby. And it was at a time when that was just really taboo. My mother was the youngest of 8 children, and her mother had already died. And so my grandfather was very strict and harsh. And when my father asked to marry my mother, he said no. And they were in love, and they got pregnant, and that's what happened. And what I believe is there was conflict from the very beginning with me, because I was the child that brought the shame to the family.
Oh, wow.
And fast forward 10 years, there's 2 other children. My father's diagnosed with esophageal cancer, and 3 years later he dies. And here's my mother, age 31, with 3 children and a 10th grade education. And she became tightened up and really strict and very hard, and a lot of mentally, physically, just hard. So much so that in high school I was kicked out of the house about 3 times. Third time I moved in with my best friend's family, and they became my family for life.
Wow.
And this family watched me, they loved me, and it was kind of like just powerful experience that they would recognize that I was having insomnia because I was so guilty, feeling like I lost my sister and brother. You can understand someone who's battered or abused wanting to go back, because you have this love and you think you want to have it back the way it could be, and it can't be. And so I was having insomnia really bad, and they took me to Catholic Charities for counseling.
Wow.
So at age 18, it was the first time someone affirmed me as an adult that I needed to look forward and not look back. And so.
And it was Catholic Charities.
It was Catholic
And you
Charities.
later became the CEO of Catholic Charities.
That's right. That's
What an experience
I
for
know,
you, though, right?
I know. This is the book I should write, 'cause it's really, I'm a faith-filled person. I believe it was all God's plan, quite frankly.
And so you had all this financial experience at United Way, and that senior experience at United Way, is that what led Catholic Charities to saying you're the person that we want for our CEO?
Well, I think it was the financial side of it. Bishop Fiorenza was on the board of the United Way at the time, and Catholic Charities was in a terrible financial way in 1993. They had negative net worth. They owed the Archdiocese a huge amount of money. They had tapped out their line of credit, and at the time that I got there, the United Way had to cut all of its agencies by 14%. So there was a cut in revenue, but there was no one stopping this spending. So as soon as I got there and looked, they hired me because of my financial background. I got there, I had to lay off 10 people, which wasn't, new CEO, never been a CEO before, but had to do this.
What a mean new CEO.
I was awful.
Yeah.
but
How did that affect the morale and the culture?
well,
at
you
Catholic
know
Charities?
what happened? I had an all-staff meeting immediately after I let people go, and I brought in the financial statements and I gave copies to everyone, and I circled all the big errors, the big bloopers.
Yeah.
I would say what was causing the pain. No one had ever shared with them that we were financially in a bad way. So the lesson I learned there was be open and honest with your staff. Let them know what's happening. They don't have to know all the nitty gritty, but you know, if you're needing resources, and everybody needs to be on board and helping us to write a grant or whatever. So the morale wasn't harmed because I started creating this openness. We started having monthly.
They started understanding what you were going through as well.
Monthly all-staff meetings. I started strengthening my senior team. Just communication flow. The communication was just a whole lot more open. And the same thing with the board. And when I explained it to the board, and the situation that we were faced, money started coming in. Money started flowing in, and
You were praying hard too.
I was praying hard, and I had to go to the bishop and tell him after 3 months on the job that we were going to end the year with a $300,000 deficit. And I told him that we had previous director had ruptured relationships with major funders. I had to rebuild all those. And Bishop Fiorenza, I love him, he looked at me and he says, Anna, we'll start the year off without a deficit. And I'm thinking, it's September and the year ends December. It's going to, you know, I said, Bishop, the only way I can do that is fire everybody. And he looked at me and I said, that's the only way I can cut the expenses. And I said, give me 2 years. And in 1 year, we got us in the black.
Oh, wow.
But it was really about informing the people, being out in the community, talking about the programs. And you know, I think the other thing was because I was a beneficiary, I could speak to what a foster child, a foster parent could do. I could speak to adoption because I felt like that. I could speak to the mental health services, the family counseling program, and it was much more credible because I had lived it.
You weren't just an administrator. You were someone who had been through the services. Wow.
And I got really knee deep. I always loved it because, you know, the staff was really afraid when I came because of my finance background. They'd always hired masters in social work. But at that time, masters in social workers did not get the administrative stream, you know, so they knew program, et cetera, but they didn't get that. And so that was the downfall of a lot of agencies. They just didn't have financial and fiscal management. So they were all afraid that I was going to, you know, always be concerned about the bottom line. And I would be in there problem solving with them, and and I said, you know, I can process with the best of you, and we can take a long time. And I get what you're saying, but at some point in time, we have to make a decision and push on. And they got it. But I knew I was there with them every step of the way. We'd have a problem with a contract. The Office of Refugee Resettlement out of the federal government was giving money for our refugee resettlement program, and we were losing the money for X number. We got in there, we problem solved, and they respected me because I didn't leave it to the finance staff. I was in there with them.
Wow. I want to do a couple more questions, 1 or 2 more questions, and then I want to go to some questions from the students that they've been sitting in. But I wanted to ask, when you look at nonprofits around town, and I look around, some are overperforming, some are underperforming. Are there common characteristics of underperforming nonprofits compared to overperforming? Or is it all about leadership? Or is leadership even the major component?
That's a good question. You know, when I was thinking about why some are successful and some are not, what I have seen is expanding too quickly. I think, and it may boil down to leadership. Sometimes a leader, when there's a change in leadership, most leaders want to create their legacy. So it's almost like they throw out what was done in the past and start all over. But there is a value of taking what's already there and understanding it really well and maintaining it for a while. You know, and so where I think agencies get in trouble is because they have expanded too quickly. They've created a satellite office, and they had the money for the bricks and mortar, but no operating cost. And and it could be that the leader was driving that. It could be that the board is saying, "Oh, we need to grow, we need to grow," but still, to your point, it's still the leader saying, "We got to rein it in. This can't be." So that's the mistake I see made. But you're right. It comes from the leader. Honestly.
It's interesting, isn't it, that as we look around, whether I'm looking at schools or businesses or nonprofits, it's so many times it just really comes down to that leadership. And I guess the role of the board is making sure you have the right leader, and making sure the leader is not making those big mistakes.
Right. As the CEO, I have an annual evaluation myself. And quite frankly, my evaluation is based upon my work plan. Every year in March, we take our budget, but our work plan, what is that we're going to do, and why do we need these resources? And then I provide my own self-evaluation, and I talk about the things that weren't on the work plan that we had to react to or adjust or adapt to. But they take that in advance, and then they do a survey, like a monkey survey, with all the board members to give feedback on my delivering on the strategic plan, brand and marketing, resource development, my interaction with the board and staff. And so I think the most important job that a board has is to evaluate their CEO and give good feedback. Get good feedback.
You see so many boards that are so focused on, did the CEO raise enough money, or did they raise? Do you think that that's one of the mistakes that maybe boards make, is it's just too much of an obsession with fundraising? I mean, obviously you need to have the money, but do you see that sometimes?
I do, and you want it to flip. We have a strategic plan with 4 goals. 3 are about community impact. The 4th is the resources, the fuel we need. And so if a board could flip and say, let's look at our programs. This is why we exist. This is the mission statement. This is our purpose. If we have stellar programs here, we can sell them. We can raise the money. We can get individuals to give us gifts. We can find grants out there. But I think there is sometimes a trap that the only thing that a CEO is good for is raising money, and it needs to be a strategic. He or she needs to be a strategic thinker. He or she needs to be involved in the community and not just inside the walls of the organization. I think the best job that I have is kind of serving on other task force and committees and other organizations, because then you get exposed to the thinking of other great minds, and you can bring that back into the organization. There's a lot of value to that. And I always say that that's really what I tell my board they need to be evaluating me on.
I find that whenever I've talked to boards and they've been doing search committees, they sort of get stars in their eyes when they're looking for new CEOs, those that are big fundraisers, right? It's so many times people say, well, how do you be a CEO? And it's, well, the thing you need to worry about or beware of is that they all want big fundraisers. You could be the best guy in terms of getting things done, but it's all about fundraising for many boards.
The question I would ask is this person from our community, and do they know our community well? Because if they know the community well, the fundraising will follow. But it's understanding your community and having this network out there. I think one of the things that got me back to the United Way was that while I was at Catholic Charities, I served on lots of other nonprofit boards. The Houston Food Bank, the Texas Interfaith Housing Corporation. I was on the Catholic Charities USA National Board. And it's that kind of interaction and exposure to other nonprofits that really said that I was an outward person. And you need an outward person. You need that quiet time to think, and but you have to be very focused externally. And I think that's what search committees should be looking for.
So let me do a couple of student questions here. Marta Alvarenga always has some great questions. And one of her questions is, what is an experience that has positively impacted your leadership style?
Well, it was deciding that I needed to get involved in advocacy and public policy work. After I had spent 8 or however years at Catholic Charities, and I went away on a silent retreat, and I said, what am I going to do? What's the next thing? And we had not paid attention to this justice part.
Did you go to the Cynical for your
I went to
summer?
the Cynical for a 1-week silent retreat.
Yes.
Read every book. Doing Faith Justice by Father Fred Kammer was one of the really important things. But to make a long story
Yes.
short, out of that, the advocacy program at Catholic Charities was born. And I had a network of charities directors across the state, and we'd meet every year. And we decided, what are we going to do at the state level? And we said, we've got to be a presence during the legislature. So the first legislative session, it was me and the Catholic Charities director from Austin walking the halls. Then the next session, 2 years in the making, we had 200 people on the steps of the Capitol, Catholic buses brought in.
Yeah.
Wearing teal T-shirts that said "Protect the Poor,"
Wow.
and then the next session it was 600, positively saying that you can pull people together around protecting children's health insurance,
Yep.
you know, quality early child. You can pull people together, and I think that's when I knew I can do this.
Yeah.
You know, I can do this. I can talk to a legislature and not have any fear because these were people whose lives. So that. I don't know if that's an adequate answer, but
that's a great answer.
It was an exciting thing for me.
Monica Science has a great question. How do you normally start your day at the United Way?
Well, I start my day at my home first. I get up, I put the pot of coffee on, and I go in my little office and I read scripture, and I write in my journal, and I get myself ready to go. And when
You write in your journal every day?
And it could be a prayer, it could be a thought, it could be a worry. This is what I'm going to do today. What I've always done is, this is, okay, God, this is what I want my campaign to be. This is what I want my weight to be. This is what, you know, put it out there, you know. And then when I walk in the building, I'm happy. I'm ready to go. I get in there about 7:15, 7:30, put a pot of coffee on, and I'm churning through emails. But usually, I'm a big to-do list person. I have a flip chart in my office that I put to-dos on. November, what are the big ticket items you have to work on? You can come to my office and see it. And then I also have a written to-do list. And then I walk around. I try to walk around and see how people are doing, you know. But most of the time, like during this time period, I'm out at company campaigns doing presentations. I serve on the board of the Greater Houston Partnership, so I'm on a task force there. So it's those kinds of engagements that I'm with. I get lots of calls from people just seeking advice and needing direction, and a lot of people wanting to come and become a United Way agency, and how do you answer that question, you know? So
Of course they want to become United Way agency.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So that's kind of,
Okay, good. How many, if you are at a conference or something and you don't get a chance to answer your email, how many email messages a day do you get?
I probably get 50 to 75,
Yeah.
I'm thinking,
Okay, well, that's not too bad.
That's not too bad.
Yeah. You have a lot of people.
But sometimes those answers are real long, you know.
Harry Davis has a really good question. And this, maybe we could relate this. Recently, the United Way in Dallas decided to do a major change in how they gave away money. And Harry's question is related to that. You know, how often does the United Way sort of shake it up a little bit?
Well, actually, we have shaken it up a bit too. You know, nationally, we're really concerned about the building blocks for a better life, and that's around education, income, and health. And but we believe 90 years plus years in Houston that we can't stop what we're doing because we invest in the safety net. So the Dallas United Way took a different route. They said, we're going to totally focus on education, we're going to totally income and health. And oh, by the way, the agencies that we were investing in, some of them fit in those categories and some of them do not.
Right.
And so sometimes
it was tough for many agencies.
Some agencies lost their funding, and I think that's dramatic. I mean, I've talked to my colleague there. I think we honor the agencies that have, I always say, brought us to the dance, and we hold them accountable. We'll increase their investments, or we'll decrease their investments accordingly. But what we have started to do, Bob, is that we have a pool of money that we invest in children and youth, and seniors and families and people rebuilding their lives. And that's about improving a life at a time, but we also carve out money on systemic change. And so our investment in United Way Thrive, which is about helping families achieve financial stability, is key. We're now making an investment in education. In addition to what we've done to United Way Bright Beginnings and investing in quality early childcare, we are now focused on third grade reading. And so you've got to put some bucks there and get volunteers there. So I think the United Way needs to step back and do both. You don't let go of either, and there's an integration there.
Is there an area within the United Way that is part of the strategic plan you'd like to get to, but you're not there yet? Is there some new thing you'd like to be doing that you're not quite there? You're doing what you want to do.
We started with Thrive 5-6 years ago, which is, after a lot of study, finding that there was this growing gap between those who have and those who have not, and what were the reasons. And we invested a lot of time there to creating this wonderful collaboration, but education was always there.
Yeah.
And so we then got a task force together to say, well, where are we going to focus? Because our little dollars are nothing compared to public dollars. So we had to think about strategically, how did we leverage our dollars to get. So we're in the beginning stages of our work with education in the third grade reading. So we're on this path, and our strategic plan is Vision 2020. So we have this, this track to be on, these objectives to get us on track to achieve that.
I remember, Anna, when you first moved from Catholic Charities to United Way, and we talked, and you said, well, the thing that I'd like to see United Way do more of, which you've done at a lot of Catholic Charities, was work on immigration. Has that come along, or is that something that you're just saying, well, that's a Catholic charity thing?
Well, I think it's embedded in families. We make an investment in Catholic Charities for immigration and it's embedded in our work in families. So it's not isolating any one group. I mean, we invest in veterans as well, but they scatter across the spectrum. So
Things are hard too to do sometimes. So.
Yes, they are.
One of the questions that Raquel Ramos asked is, how many hours do you work on average in a week, and how do you best balance all your responsibilities, life and work?
I say I have a 12-hour day. If I get there at 7, I'm leaving at 7.
Is that sign still at your parking place that said reserved 23 hours a day because Anna needs 1 hour to sleep? Yeah.
Yes, it is. And I have some activity on the weekend, but very little. Some days could be 16 hours if you have an event that takes you to 10 o'clock at night. But I want to be real clear that there is no such thing as work-life balance. You are who you are, and you integrate. I am happy at United Way because I am happy at home, and I'm happy at home because I'm happy at the United Way. Now, that doesn't say that in the early parts of my career it wasn't hard. And there were sacrifices that were made, and my husband, God bless him, a school teacher, so he had the primary responsibility of picking up the kids at the end of the day and being with them, but we were always in partnership with this. So it can be long, but I love what I'm doing. So if you love what you're doing,
I've never heard anyone express it like that, but in a sense, and it's especially true at the leadership level, you have to be completely immersed in it. Either side, whether you're at home or at work, you're immersed in it, aren't you?
That's one of the things that is hard sometimes to mentor a millennial on. There really is no, I'm always on. I always tell people that even in the grocery store, I'm Anna Babin, CEO of the United Way. I'll never forget one Sunday after church, we were in the grocery store picking up some things, and somebody was walking down the aisle and saying, "Hi" to me, and I went, "Hi," and he said, "You work for Devon Energy, don't you?" And I said, "No, but I was at your kickoff this past week, and I was on the big screen," so they recognize your face. And so you're in leadership position, you are who you are.
That's right.
Always. You're always on, so to speak. You're always working.
Whether you have a T-shirt on or whatever, it's your face.
That's right.
I find it because I'm on TV every once in a while. People think that they know me.
Yes.
Like, hey, how you doing?
Yes.
And then you just have to be friendly back.
Yes,
to
you
them.
do.
I had a young staff member one time say, "I hate it when I go home and all I'm doing is thinking about work." And I thought, well, that's the way it is. You're always thinking about work. That's how life is.
That's right. That's
it
right.
just happens that particular way. In our final couple minutes, a couple of sort of quick questions for you. When you look at Houston, do you see a bright future for our city?
I do. I do, because I see a great deal of work in partnership with the Greater Houston Partnership. The assessment that they've made that we've got this plethora of people and a high demand for middle skills jobs, and we can tackle that. So I think Houston, we can turn the corner on this economic gap. Because we're working in partnership, the nonprofits are working in partnership with the business community, that we can have the resources to fill jobs. We can also help them in the training of people to get them workforce ready. And we have the benefit of the soft skills, providing the soft skills, because sometimes just teaching someone to show up on time or to dress appropriately is a great gift. So I see a great future, but I'm always a person with the glass is not just half full, it's always full. So I'm really positive about the future. We've had good leadership in our mayor and county judge. They think about social issues, and that's what you want. It's not just about roads or parks.
Right.
It is about quality of life, but Greater Houston Partnership had this commission, Joel Kotkin, and he did this study on Houston being an opportunity city, and we said, but it's not an opportunity city for all. If you have over 115,000 families with children under the age of 18 making $20,000 a year, they can't live on that. How do we lift it up? And I think Houston's prime. This is a place where everybody can come and get a chance. We just have to open some doors for some folks that just they've not had the mama and daddy to help them in that regard, or they weren't born into that environment,
It's interesting because I know both of us in our work, we talk a lot about poverty. And when you look at a lot of social indicators, you could be depressed. Yes. But you almost get a sense when you're working in Houston is that if anything can change anywhere, it's in Houston, right?
It's in Houston.
A lot of possibilities here.
Right.
Do you have faith in our public schools here in Houston?
I have hope for our public schools. My husband spent 38 years in HISD, in special ed. We now work very closely with HISD and Spring Branch ISD on our reading program, and we have Duncan Klusman on our board. So my hope is in the leadership, yes.
Yeah. We do have some good leaders in many of our school districts,
we do.
Which is, we can't say the same about many other cities in Texas.
You're
so
right.
that's very nice. Sort of a fun question for you, or a couple of fun questions. Your favorite restaurant, and many leaders have said, well, can I do a favorite high-end and a favorite do you have a favorite restaurant?
I do, and people are going to think it's Old Guard, but I love Brennan's.
Oh, what a good place.
Brennan's to me, I went to Brennan's when I was in French class in high school, and it's always been just so glamorous for me.
It's like a comfortable fancy restaurant too, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. And my birthday's the day after Christmas, so one time it fell on a Sunday, so we went for a jazz brunch. And my sons then thought their birthdays they should go to Brennan's. No. But I love Brennan's, and so. But there's I love all the Mexican food restaurants. But Brennan's is special.
Brennan's is dangerous because of those pralines as you leave, that big pile of pralines. Take as many as you want.
That's right.
I always take way too many. More than they want, I'm sure.
That's right.
But I take, so. Do you have a favorite secret hidden venue, a little place in Houston that sort of maybe not a lot of people know about that you like a lot?
No, I don't. I thought about that. I don't.
Okay.
I really.
There's no little secret park that you like?
Venue. Okay, you say park. My favorite place in Houston is the Cynical Retreat House.
Very
good.
Yes.
So it's in the Memorial area off of Kirkwood. You wouldn't believe you're in Houston at the time with these tall pine trees, and it's a place where I can go and have a little room by myself, and 3 meals a day taken care of, and it's just quiet, and it's my space. I go twice a year for a silent retreat, and not just spirituality, but to think about planning and dreaming for the future of the United Way. So I would say that's my favorite venue.
I've gone there a couple times with the American Leadership Forum, and I really enjoy it.
It's great.
It's a great place. And then our final question for this evening, is there some sort of leadership person in history or present that you look at and say, well, that was a great leader and maybe serves as an example for you?
I didn't think about that one.
That was the last question. Idol. You're sort of idol.
My idol?
Yeah, yeah.
My idol? Oh, an idol.
Yeah, or leadership.
Oh, okay. What I was thinking of idol
Yes.
was an actor.
Oh.
And I will tell you, and
Have you been on a radio show as well where I ask you which actor looks like you? I think.
No.
Oh, okay.
No. But here's the one, Martin Sheen.
Oh,
And the
okay.
reason I like Martin Sheen, of course I loved West Wing, but the reason I love Martin Sheen is that he's an activist. How many times has he been thrown in jail
Right.
because he's been at a protest? But he's there on Thanksgiving feeding at the soup kitchen with the homeless. And so I always think that there's someone who's, in this Hollywood glamorous, but has a life that's of service to others
Yeah.
and sticks his neck out on it.
He's been doing that for a long time,
yeah.
too.
Oh,
I remember
yeah.
when he was sleeping out with the homeless.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
He's done war protests,
Oh, yeah.
nuclear plants, and he's done a
So
lot of that
that's
stuff.
what I thought about idol.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's very good.
If I wanted to walk in someone's shoes,
Anna, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. You do such amazing things for our community. A great leader.
Thank
and
you.
we wish you the best, and we'll see you soon.
Well, thank you for
Thank
letting
you
me be
very
here.
much.
Appreciate it.
Alrighty. And so that's our last leadership studio for the semester. We want to make sure you get your papers in. We'll start grading them pretty soon. And hopefully we'll see some of you, or not, if not all of you, next semester. Have a great holiday, and thanks for being in the class.